Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to today's session of Mahabharata reading and Shloka recitation, Bhagavad Gita Shloka recitation. Today's session 5. Let's begin with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapters 7, 8 and 9. Everyone please recite along with me. Keep your cameras turned on. Seven one. Sri Bhagavanuvacha Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Yasyasi Tachrinu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. 7.2 Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyamya sheshataha yajgyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. 7.3 Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tattvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. 7.4 Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu kammano buddhireva cha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtadha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence and false ego, all together these 8 comprise my separated material energies. 7.5 Apareyam mitastvanyam prakritim viddhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. 7.6 Etadyonini bhutani sarvani tyupadharaya aham kritsnasya jagataha prabhavaha pralayastatha. All created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. 7.7 मत्तः परतरं नान्यत् किञ्चिदस्ति धनञ्जय मयि सर्वमिदं प्रोतं सूत्रे मणिगणा इव. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. 7-8 रसोऽहमप्सु कौन्तेय प्रभास्मि शशिसूर्ययोः प्रणवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दः खे पौरुषं नृषु. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. 7:10 बीजं मां सर्वभूतानां विद्धि पार्थ सनातनं बुद्धिर्बुद्धिमतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामहम्. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. 7:11 Balam balavatam chaham kamaragavivarjitam dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshabha. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life which is not contrary to religious principles. O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. 7:12 Ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasa tamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. 7:13 त्रिभिर्गुणमयैर्भावैर् एभिः सर्वमिदं जगत् मोहितं नाभिजानाति मामेभ्यः परमव्ययम्. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. 7:14 Daivi hesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. 7:15 Namam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya pahrita jnana asuram bhavamashritaah. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. 7:16 Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritinarjuna arto jigyasur artharthi jnani cha bharatarshabha. O best among the Bharatas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. 7:17 Tesham jnani nityayukta ekabhaktirvishishyate priyo hi jnaninotyartham aham sa cha mama priyaha. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. Madhava, why are you turning off your camera all the time? Just stay steadily. Text 19. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudevah sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is, Such a great soul is very rare. 720. कामैस्तैस्तैर्हृतज्ञाना प्रपद्यन्तेऽन्यदेवता तं तं नियमम् आस्थाय प्रकृत्या नियता स्वया. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. 722. Sataya Shraddhaya Yuktas Tasyaradhanamihate Labhate cha tatah kaman mayaiva vihitan hitan. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. 723. अन्तवत्तु फलं तेषां तद्भवत्यल्पमेधसां देवान् देवयजो यान्ति मद्भक्ता यान्ति मामपि. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. 724. अव्यक्तं व्यक्तिमापन्नं मन्यन्ते मामबुद्धयः परं भावम् अजानन्तो ममाव्ययम् अनुत्तमम्. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. 725. नाहं प्रकाशः सर्वस्य योगमाया समावृताः मूढोऽयं नाभिजानाति लोको मामजमव्ययम्. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. 726. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. 727. इच्छाद्वेष समुत्थेन द्वन्द्व मोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परन्तपा. O Scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. 728. येषां त्वन्तगतं पापं जनानां पुण्यकर्मणां ते द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता bhajante mam dridhavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Chapter 8, 8.5. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. 8.6. यं यं वापि स्मरन् भावं त्यजत्यन्ते कलेवरं तं तं एवैति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. 8.7. तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मर युध्य च मय्यर्पिता मनो बुद्धिर् मामे वैश्यस्य संशयः. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. 8.8 अभ्यासयोगयुक्तेन चेतसा नान्यगामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन्. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha, is sure to reach me. So 8.14 अनन्यचेताः सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. 8.15 मामुपेत्या पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयम् अशाश्वतं नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गताः. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection. 8.16 आब्रह्मभुवनाल्लोका पुनरावर्तिनोऽर्जुन मामुपेत्य तु कौन्तेय पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. 8.17 सहस्रयुगपर्यन्तम् आहर्यद्ब्रह्मणो विदुः रात्रिं युगसहस्रान्तां ते होरात्रविदो जनाः. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. 8.19 भूतग्रामः स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यहरागमे. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. 8.20 परस्तस्मात्तु भावोऽन्यो व्यक्तो व्यक्तात् सनातनः यः स सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. 8.21 अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तमाहुः परमां गतिं यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम paramam mama. That which the Vedantists describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. 8.28 वेदेषु यज्ञेषु तपस्सु चैव दानेषु यत् पुण्यफलं प्रदिष्टम् अत्येति तत्सर्वमिदं विदित्वा योगी परं स्थानमुपैति चाद्यम्. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. Chapter 9, 9.1. Sri Bhagavanuvacha idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyamyanasuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajgyatva mokshase shubhat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. 9.2. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumavyayam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So you can pay attention to each of the words here. Raja Vidya, king of all education. Raja Guhyam, king of all secrets. Pavitram, purest. Uttamam, right? It is the best. And yeah, it is. It is the perfection of religion. Uttamam. Pratyakshaavagamam, it gives direct perception. Susukham, it is performed very joyfully, right? Joyfully performed. Avyayam. Avyayam means it's never finished, inexhaustible, everlasting. Avyayam is everlasting, like that. 9.3. Ashraddhana purusha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. So, there's warning also. If we are not faithful, then we have to come back. 9.4. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina matsthani sarva bhutani nachaham teshvavastitaha. By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. 9.5. न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा bhutaभावनः. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. 9.10. Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. 9.11. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritah ashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. 9.12. Moghasha mogha karmano mogha jnana vichetasah rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shritah. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. 9.13. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritimashritah bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadimavyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. 9:14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrataah namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. 9:17. पिताहमस्य जगतो माता धाता पितामहः वेद्यं पवित्रमोङ्कारा ऋक्साम यजुरेव च. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. 9:21. ते तं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालं क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति एवं त्रयी धर्ममनुप्रपन्ना गतागतं कामकामा लभन्ते. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. 9:22. Ananyāścintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. But those who worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. 9:23. Yepyanya bhakta yajante shraddhayanvitaah tepi mameva kaunteya yajantya vidhipurvakam. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. 9:24. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijananti tatve natascha vantite. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. 9:25. Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitrivrataha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopi mam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. 9:26. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. 9:27. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. 9:29. Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshyosti na priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. 9:30. अपि चेत् सुदुराचारो भजते मामनन्यभाक् साधुरेव स मन्तव्यः सम्यग् व्यवसितो हि सः. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. 931. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. 932. Mam hi partha vyapashritya yepi syuhu papayonayah striyo vaishyas tatha shudras tepi yanti param gatim. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. 933. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshayas anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasva mam. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. 934. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So now we'll read Mahabharata. Quickly, please tell me what you remember from what we read yesterday. Just tell me the Rasapriya.
Hidimba killed.
Hmm.
Hidimba killed.
Hidimba is killed. Okay. Madhava.
Um, the house being burned down, and
Yes.
also the Pandavas escaping to
The
the
lakh
forest.
house is burnt and the Pandavas escape into the forest. Yes. Okay. That's it. What happened after that? Madhava, you're raising your hand again? Isha.
After killing Hidimba, the Pandavas and Kuntiji, they went to Ekachakra, and over there Bhimsen killed Bakasur.
Yes. So that's where we ended, right? Bakasur killed. Rasapriya.
Ghatotkaч was burned.
Ah, very good. That's right. Ghatotkaч is also born. After Hidimba is killed, then Bhimsen marries Hidimbi. That's also there, right? So Hidimbi takes them all to one place, into a cottage, and then, yeah, 7 months later, Ghatotkaч is born, and then the Pandavas once again leave Hidimbi and they continue on their journey, and that's when Vyasdev meets them. Vyasdev brings them to Ekachakra, to that Brahman's house, and then Vyasdev said that you stay here until I come back. I'll come back to you and tell you what to do next. Until I come, you stay here. Yes, so you remember the story of Bakasura. So the Brahmana, it was their turn that day to carry food for Bakasura, and one of them, whoever's carrying that food, would also be eaten by Bakasura. So Kunti Maharani was feeling that we have taken um, we have been served by, we've been given shelter by this Brahmana and his family. We should also do something for them in return. She had been contemplating on this, and when she heard one day, heard some crying in the inner quarters, she went and overheard the Brahmana's predicament. So then she offered to send her son, and she convinced them that nothing, no harm would come to her son What is the reason? What did she say? How Bhimsen would be able to kill Bakasur? What was the reason?
Oh,
Krishna
okay.
Shish.
He had various mystic powers and mantras.
He knew some mantras. So by that mystic power, he could actually kill. And we have seen that before. We saw him kill some Rakshasas. So he can do that. But don't tell anyone about this. Because if you told others, then they will come and they will pester my son to reveal that mantra to them. And then if it is told like that, then the mantra will lose its potency like that. So Bhimsen killed Bakasur. And what did Bhimsen do after killing Bakasur? What was the last thing? What did he do to Bakasur's body?
He deposited at the city gates.
Yes. Yeah. And also he warned all the other Rakshasas who were completely scared seeing the way Bakasur was killed by Bhimsen. You remember, he just, he held his neck and his waistcloth and he just broke his back into two. And seeing this, all the Rakshasas, they got scared. And he said, don't ever attack human beings, then I won't do anything to you. So they all said, yes, they won't do that. And they fled from there out of fear of Bhimsen. So now we'll continue. Next chapter, chapter 9. The Gandharva, Angaraparna. When the sun rose, the people of Ekachakra found Baka's dead body. They were astonished to see it lying there in a twisted mess. This is actually a trademark of Bhimsen's killing. Whenever he killed such Rakshasas, he would just kill them in such a way that you could tell it is Bhimsen's work. So they saw Bakasur in a twisted mess, its mouth and eyes wide open. The citizens' hair stood on end and their mouths fell open in amazement. They'd never seen anything like that before. First of all, it was Bakasur and killed so terribly. So their mouths fell open in amazement. Thousands of people gathered, all asking who had killed him. Gradually, they realized that it had been the Brahman's turn to take food to the demon the previous night. A noisy crowd soon gathered outside the Brahman's house. While the Pandavas remained inside, the Brahman spoke to the people. Yesterday, as I sat by the roadside weeping at the thought of mine and my family's plight, a Brahman came by. When he found out the cause of my distress, he promised to deliver me and the town from this constant danger. Learned in the incantations that invoke celestial weapons, the Brahman assured me that he would take the food to Baka on my behalf and kill him. He must have been successful at this inconceivable feat because Baka now lies dead. The people looked at one another in wonder. Then they laughed and shouted in joy. They declared a festival to the Rakshasa's death. The Pandavas continued to live at the Brahman's house as Vyasadeva had instructed them. It had been months since the sage had last spoken with them. They expected his return at any time, and they passed their days in begging alms and studying the Vedic scriptures. One day, a wandering ascetic came to the Brahman's house and accepted his invitation to stay for a few days. Because remember, this Brahman would host travelers, any travelers, especially Brahmins, he would host them in his house. So another Brahman traveler happened to come to their village, and this Brahman hosted that Brahman in his house. After he had been duly worshipped and fed by the Brahman and his family, the ascetic told, okay, so this is an ascetic, not just a Brahman, but he's a sadhu, ascetic. Um, the ascetic told stories from his travels. The Pandavas listened along with the Brahman's family. They heard about a great Swayamvara ceremony soon to be held in Kampilya for Draupadi, King Drupada's daughter. This princess, the ascetic said, was not born of a woman, but had been born along with her brother Drstadyumna from the sacrificial fire. The Pandavas were intrigued. They asked, "Please tell us how it is possible that Draupadi and her brother could appear from the fire? We desire to hear everything you know." The ascetic first told them about Drona. The sage Bharadwaj had once seen Gritachi, a divinely beautiful Apsara, and as a result, he had dropped his vital seed. He caught his seed in a pot, and from that seed, Drona was born. Okay, so Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaj and Apsara, Gritachi. As a child, Drona had been friends with Drupada, who had come to study at Bharadwaj's hermitage. Okay. Elsewhere, it is said that both of them were studying in Agnivesha's ashram, but either way, they were friends in their childhood. Some time after Drupada left the hermitage, Drona heard that the invincible Brahman warrior Parashuram was retiring to the forest. Okay, after Drupada left the hermitage, Drona heard that the invincible Brahman warrior Parashuram was retiring to the forest and was giving away all his possessions. Drona approached him and asked for charity. Parashuram replied, "Having once won this wide earth from the ruling class, I am now without wealth. I have already given it to the Brahmins. I possess only my body and my weapons. Which of these would you prefer, O Brahman?" Drona asked Parashuram for his celestial weapons, along with the knowledge to use them. The rishi bestowed his weapons upon Drona, who then left to again see his friend Drupada. By then, Drupada had become the king of Panchala. The Pandavas listened as the ascetic told them what they had already heard from Drona himself, how Drupada had insulted his friend most terribly. Not knowing that it was the Pandavas who were listening, the ascetic told them how Drupada had then been overpowered by the Pandavas at Drona's command. And they were listening attentively. After being humiliated by Drona and losing half his kingdom, so this is what probably they didn't know. After being humiliated by Drona and losing half his kingdom, Drupada thought only of revenge. He knew he could never defeat Drona in battle, so he had gone to the forest to seek out a powerful Brahman. He knew that only a Brahman's spiritual power could match Drona's strength. After some time, Drupada came across two Brahman brothers named Yaja and Upayaja, descendants of Kashyapa, a powerful son of Brahma. Kashyapa is a powerful son of Brahma, and Kashyapa's descendants are these two brothers, Yaja and Upayaja. The king worshipped and served the two Brahmins for some time in the forest. Okay, he went into the forest and is serving them. Then asked for their assistance. He approached the younger of the two, Upayaja, first, knowing him to be the more powerful. Drupada asked him to conduct a sacrifice that would give the king a son capable of killing Drona. Drupada offered him 10,000 cows as payment. Okay? He said, "You do a sacrifice for me. The purpose of the sacrifice is I want a son who can kill Drona. And for doing this sacrifice on my behalf, I'm going to give you 10,000 cows as a payment." But the Brahman replied, "I shall not perform any act directed toward material gain, either for myself or for another." The disappointed Drupada continued serving Upayaja in the hope that he might relent. Finally, after a full year had passed, the Brahman took pity on him and said, "I once saw my elder brother take up and eat a fruit from the ground without considering whether or not it was clean." That means he's not so uh, careful about what is clean, what is not clean. He just picked up, a fruit from the ground and he ate it. When we were both boys studying in our guru's house, I often saw him eat the remnants of other people's food, something left in the plate of others, he would just come and eat it. One who has no regard for purity in one thing will not have such regard in another. So, because he's not so particular about purity with respect to eating, we can also understand that he will also be not particular about purity in other matters, such as, let's say, performing yagya for material gain. He probably would not mind that. Hmm? Therefore, approach him, for he will surely perform your sacrifice. The Brahman's words proved true, and Yaja agreed to Drupada's proposal. The Brahman, realizing what difficult a task the king had requested, engaged his younger brother to assist him. Although Upayaja had no personal desire to perform Drupada's sacrifice, he could not refuse his elder brother's request. That was more like an order, older brother. So he had to do it. Thus, the two Brahmins went to Kampilya to perform a fire sacrifice intended to propitiate the gods, headed by Lord Vishnu. Thus, Drupada would be able to get a son capable of killing Drona. As the sacrifice commenced, the king again spoke with Yaja. Remembering the day he had been overpowered by Arjun, he asked the priest if, as well as a son, he might obtain a beautiful daughter whom he could offer to Arjun as his wife. Drupada thought that if Arjun became his son in law, his happiness would be complete. Yaja replied, "It shall be so." And Drupada joyfully sat down by the sacrificial fire with his queen. So now he wanted a son who can kill Drona and also a daughter that can marry Arjun. As the ritual neared completion, Yaja called for Drupada's wife. "Come quickly, O queen, a son and daughter have now come for you." The queen replied, "O Brahman, I am not pure. My mouth is filled with saffron and my body is smeared with perfumes. I am not ready to receive the sacrificial ghee." Yaja replied, "Whether or not you are ready, the object of this sacrifice, whether or not you are ready, the object of this sacrifice which I have prepared and Upayaja has sanctified cannot be thwarted." Right? It will come, whether you're there or not, it's going to come. Yaja had then poured the oblation into the fire. Immediately there arose from the flames a god-like boy. He was encased in brilliant golden armor, and he shone like fire. He wore a bright crown on his head and held a long bow and a sword. That youth was terrible to behold, and he rose from the fire roaring. Stepping clear of the flames, he mounted the king's chariot and immediately rode about, displaying all kinds of skill, like the martial exhibition. The people of Kampilya had shouted with joy upon seeing this boy who would fulfill the king's desire and kill his enemy. As their cries of happiness resounded, a celestial woman appeared from the fire. Her complexion was dark, and her smiling eyes were shaped like lotus petals. Her long and curling hair was bluish in color, and it fell down her back as she emerged from the flames. She had rising breasts and tapering thighs. At the end of her graceful fingers were nails that shone like bright copper. Her body emanated the sweet fragrance of blue lotuses, which could be perceived at a distance of 2 miles. Wow. That divine woman captivated the mind of every man who saw her. She had no equal, even among the gods or the Gandharvas. The ascetic then told his attentive audience how a heavenly voice had spoken from the skies as soon as the boy and girl had appeared. Booming like thunder, it had said, this is the ascetic telling the Pandavas. So he said that soon after the appearance of Drstadyumna and Draupadi, there was a heavenly voice, Akashvani, that said, "This dark skinned beauty will be the best of all women, and she will be the cause of the destruction of the world's warriors. The boy shall be called Drstadyumna, and he shall slay Drona." Drona heard about this prophecy. But considering destiny to be supreme, he nevertheless agreed to train Drupada's son in martial arts. The noble Drona did this to repay Drupada for taking half his kingdom. You see? So he took half. Actually, he had defeated Drupada and he conquered Drupada's kingdom. Still, he gave him half. He returned half of the kingdom back. But you see, he's a Brahmana, right? So he felt that I took his kingdom, so I must do something for him in return. So therefore, when Drishtadyumna approached him to learn martial arts, he taught him, thinking that this is the return for half of the kingdom, half of Drupada's kingdom which I took. I'm going to repay for it by teaching Drishtadyumna. And he was aware that Drishtadyumna was going to be the cause of his death. Still, he taught him. The ascetics stopped. Having heard that Drishtadyumna would kill their beloved teacher, the Pandavas felt as if their hearts had been pierced. Kunti saw their perplexity, and after they had retired for the night, said to Yudhishthir, "We have lived here for many months. I think it would be wise to leave now. You are all restless. I also sense that you desire to go to Panchala for Draupadi's Swayamvara." Kunti had seen her son's eyes open wide when the ascetic had described Draupadi's celestial beauty. Therefore, she suggested that they leave the next day for Panchala. All five brothers agreed to her proposal, and the following morning they made their farewells to the Brahman and his family. Walking in a line with Kunti in their middle, they then headed toward Panchala, traveling again through the forest. On the first evening of their journey, as they sat around their fire, Vyasdev arrived. Upon seeing him, the Pandavas prostrated themselves at his feet. They then stood with their palms folded as Vyasdev offered them blessings. When everyone was seated, Vyasdev said, "O conqueror of foes, are you following the path of virtue enjoined in the scriptures? Do you worship the Brahmins? I hope you always honor those worthy of your respect." The rishi spoke for some time, giving the attentive princes various instructions. At the end of his discourse, Vyasdev told them that they should try to win the hand of the princess of Panchala. Her father was setting an archery test in order to find her a qualified husband. Arjun should enter the contest. Vyasdev then stood up to leave, and after again receiving obeisances from the Pandavas, vanished into the woods. Reassured by Vyasdev's directions, the brothers continued their journey the next day with joyous hearts. They walked day and night, eager to arrive at Panchala in time for the Swayamvara. It was just after nightfall, several days later, when they came upon the gently flowing waters of the Ganges. Arjun was leading the party with a torch in his hand to light their way. They all bowed respectfully to the sacred river before walking along her banks, searching for a place to cross. Suddenly, so what is the time? This was um, just after nightfall. So this was in the night. Okay. Suddenly, from out of the darkness, they heard a loud voice. "Halt! Who dares approach this river at such a time? The night belongs to Yakshas, Gandharvas, and Rakshasas. Only during the first portion of night, the twilight time, are other beings allowed to bathe. You appear to be human beings, therefore return the way you have come." A shining figure emerged from the waters, rose into the air, and descended onto a golden chariot. Clasping a huge bow, he continued to address them in a thunderous voice. "I am the Gandharva Angaraparna, friend of Kuvera, treasurer of the gods." Okay, Kuvera is the treasurer of the gods, and I am a Gandharva, a friend of Kuvera. "I am bathing here. Not even the gods or demons would dare come to this river when I am bathing. How then have you humans been so bold? Leave quickly, or I will kill you. I fear no one." Arjun could not tolerate the Gandharva's haughty speech. Oh, wretch! Rivers and mountains are never barred to anyone at any time. There is no such thing as a special time when we are not allowed to approach this sacred river, nor do we care for your threats. Only the weak would fear someone like you. Make way, because we are now going to bathe in this river. Angaraparna blazed with anger. He drew his bow and shot 100 arrows at the brothers. Arjun moved with blinding speed and struck down all those shafts simply with the torch he was holding. He was not even shooting arrows. He laughed at the Gandharva. Do not attempt to frighten those who are skilled in warfare. Your weapons simply vanish like froth on the ocean when hurled at more powerful opponents. O Sky Ranger, I know you are superior to men in prowess. Therefore, I shall use a celestial missile against you. The fire weapon I will now discharge was first given to Bharadwaj by Brihaspati. Bharadwaj then gave it to Agnivesha, who gave it to my preceptor Drona. Okay, so Agnivesha is the teacher of Drona. Drona received from Agnivesha. So Bharadwaj gave to Agnivesha, Agnivesha gave to Drona. Drona gave it to me. Guard yourself from its power if you can. Chanting the incantations to invoke the Agneyastra, Arjun imbued his torch with its tremendous power. So Arjun does not have his Gandiva yet. So he imbued his torch with that mantra, Agneyastra. Angrily, he threw it at Angaraparna, and his chariot was immediately destroyed, burnt black. The Gandharva fainted from the missile's force and fell headlong from the smoking chariot. He was on the chariot, so he fell down. And he fainted. Arjun seized him by his hair, which was adorned with garlands of flowers, and dragged him before Yudhishthir. Suddenly, a celestial woman rushed out of the water and approached Yudhishthir. Folding her palms, she said, O exalted one, I am Kumbhinashi, Angaraparna's wife. Please bestow your mercy upon me and set him free. I seek your protection. The Gandharva came to his senses and sat up before Yudhishthir, who said to him, O Gandharva, who would slay one who has been vanquished in battle, who stands deprived of his fame, who is unable to protect himself, and who is being protected by a woman? You may go. Angaraparna stood and offered his respects to Yudhishthir. He spoke with humility. My pride has been crushed by your younger brother. My celestial chariot lies burnt to ashes. I had been known as Chitraratha. Chitra means wonderful. Ratha means chariot. One with a wonderful chariot, right? Chitraratha. I had been known as Chitraratha. So Chitraratha is the name of Angaraparna. And he was known as Chitraratha, one of the beautiful chariot. But from now on, I shall call myself Dagdharatha, one with a burnt chariot. He of the burnt chariot. Angaraparna thanked Arjun for not killing him, even though able. In return for Arjun's mercy, Angaraparna offered him the divine knowledge possessed by the Gandharvas, along with a team of celestial horses. Smiling, Aṅgaraparna said, this knowledge known as Chakshushi, will give you the ability to see anything within the three worlds, along with that thing's intrinsic nature. It is this knowledge that gives the Gandharvas the powers that make them superior to men. Aṅgaraparna waved his hand toward the river bank, and the Pandavas saw there a group of lustrous white steeds, horses. These are the horses I wish to give you. They will go anywhere at their owner's will. They are said to be a portion of Indra's thunderbolt and will always unfailingly fulfill your desire. Arjun said, O Gandharva, if you desire to give your knowledge and these horses in return for your life, then I shall not accept them. It was my duty to release you on my brother's order. I cannot accept charity, for that is never the duty of the ruling class, right? So If you're giving it just like that, I cannot take it as charity. And if you're giving it for releasing you, no, then that will become I'm taking some payment for releasing you. But I didn't release for any payment. I released it because on the order of my brother. And if you say, okay, then just take it like that, then I cannot take charity because I'm a Kshatriya. So in either case, I cannot accept what you're offering. Angaraparna smiled again. This need not be charity, O best of the Bharata race. I desire to learn from you how to throw the fire weapon which you used to overpower me. Okay, so don't think that this is a charity. I mean, I'm giving this to you in exchange for learning how to use that weapon, the fire weapon that you use, Agneyastra. Arjuna agreed to this exchange, but said he first wanted to know why the Gandharva had challenged him and his brothers, although they were all virtuous men, learned in the Vedas and born in a noble line of kings. The Gandharva replied, O Arjuna, I have heard from Narad Rishi of your ancestors' great accomplishments. I also know your fathers personally. I know your fathers personally. That means the demigods, like Yamaraj, Vayu, Indra. Yeah, because Dharma, Vayu, Indra, the Ashwinis, and even Pandu all reside in heaven. Although I knew although I knew you are all high-souled, virtuous, powerful, and obedient to your vows, I nevertheless censured you. No man possessed of strength and arms ought to tolerate a confrontation in front of his wife. I was overpowered by wrath. Yes. So actually, there was no fault of yours. The reason I did this is because, I felt I was in the presence of my wife and I felt confronted in the presence of my wife. So therefore, I became angry because I had to show my power. Angaraparna went on to explain why Arjun had been able to defeat him, although he was a celestial. Yes, Arjun is a human, Angaraparna is a celestial. How was Arjun able to defeat a celestial? Because you have been observing a vow of celibacy, O hero, your power became insurmountable. If a warrior engaged in satisfying his desires fights with the Gandharvas at night, he will not escape with his life. Okay, so Gandharvas are powerful in the night, and if a warrior who is engaged in satisfying his desires, that means who is not a celibate, if he fights the Gandharvas in the night, he will not escape with his life. Angaraparna said that even a warrior who is not celibate could defeat a powerful enemy if he is accompanied by a Brahman priest. The Gandharva concluded, men with learned and self-controlled priests can conquer the earth and acquire every good fortune, finally attaining even heaven itself. Therefore, O descendant of Tapati, you should seek out a qualified priest as your guide, because in future you'll get married. Kshatriyas, they get married, right? Except for Bhishma Dev. Kshatriyas get married. So then what? Then they won't be able to defeat the Gandharvas? No, you still can defeat. If you have a Brahman priest, a self-controlled and learned Brahman priest, you can still defeat. Arjun was listening carefully. He was curious that Angaraparna addressed him as a descendant of Tapati. He asked, as the king sons of Kunti, we are known as the Kaunteyas. Why did you address us as Tapatyas? I have not heard this before. It was a long story. Angaraparna invited the brothers to sit comfortably on the river bank while he recited the history of their distant ancestor Tapati, daughter of the sun god. Tapati had descended from the heavens and married Samvarana, an early king in the Pandavas line. Okay? The Gandharva narrated this history along with many other incidental stories. He spoke for much of the night, and the enthralled brothers could see the first faint glow of dawn when he finished his narration. Arjun then said to him, O Gandharva, you know everything and can see everything by your divine sight. Please tell us where we can find a Brahman who knows the Vedas and can become our priest. Angaraparna replied that not far from there was a forest ashram called Utkachaka. A Brahmin named Dhaumya, the younger brother of the famous Rishi Devala, resided there. They should approach him and ask that he become their preceptor. Seeing the Gandharva's friendship toward them and grateful for his advice, Arjun gave him the mantra by which he could call the Agneyastra. In return, Angaraparna again offered him the horses. Arjun replied, I will not take anything from you now. I do not desire your knowledge, and we cannot take the horses at present. O best of the Gandharvas, your friendship is sufficient. Perhaps, if a time comes when we need these steeds, we shall then take them. Angaraparna and the Pandavas saluted one another respectfully and took their leave. The Gandharva and his wife disappeared into the sky, leaving the Pandavas to continue on their journey. After Angaraparna left, the Pandavas went north along the bank of the Ganges toward where the Gandharva had indicated they would find Dhaumya's ashram. The sun had risen, and they could now see many rishis bathing in the river, wearing a single piece of cloth and with their matted locks tied in knots on their heads. The brothers could hear the sages reciting sacred hymns from the Vedas, some in praise of the sun god Surya, some worshipping Shiva, the mighty destroyer, and others praying to the supremely powerful Lord Vishnu. The Pandavas took their own baths in the Ganges. Using the sacred clay from the river bank, they daubed their bodies with markings that showed them to be Vaishnavas. So they used the clay from the Ganges to put tilak on their body. Devotees of Vishnu. Kunti entered the water fully clothed and then changed her dress in a secluded place. She thought constantly of Krishna, praying that he would help them through their difficulties. The sages told the brothers where to find Dhaumya's hermitage. They then approached Dhaumya and fell at his feet. Yudhishthir said, O greatly learned one, we are Pandu's sons, traveling with our mother Kunti. On the Gandharva's advice, we seek your shelter. Please become our guide and protector. We are your servants. The effulgent Dhaumya smiled and bade them be seated. His disciples brought them offerings of wild fruits and water. As he looked upon the 5 young princes and the gentle Kunti, the rishi felt affection rise in his heart. He could see that they worshipped Vishnu, his own deity, and this too attracted him. Therefore, he consented to become their priest. The Pandavas were overjoyed and felt as if their wealth and kingdom had already been regained and Draupadi won. Dhaumya then formally accepted them as disciples by initiating them with Vedic mantras. You see, yeah, they got martial training from Dronacharya and Kripacharya, but they didn't study the Vedic mantras by taking initiation. They didn't accept a particular spiritual master. So that happened now. The many sages in Dhaumya's ashram offered the princes their blessings. Seeing such godlike boys, the rishis felt that the brothers, by their own accomplishments, would soon become rulers of the earth. Accompanied by Dhaumya, the Pandavas continued on their journey to Panchala. Next, chapter 10, Draupadi's Swayamvara. I think this is a big one. Let me see. But we have time. We can read. Draupadi's Swayamvara. After a few days' journey, the forest paths brought the Pandavas and Dhaumya onto the road leading to Panchala. As they made their way along that broad stone highway, they met a group of Brahmins. The Brahmins asked, Who are you and where are you going? Yudhishthir replied that they were 5 brahmacharis, celibate students, who had come from Ekachakra along with their teacher. The Brahmins then exhorted the brothers to attend Draupadi's Swayamvara. Accompany us, we are going straight there. The magnanimous King Drupada will be distributing vast wealth to the Brahmins on his divine daughter's behalf. Again the Pandavas heard of the extraordinary birth and beauty of Draupadi, as well as details of her impending Swayamvara. All of Kampilya would be celebrating. There would be actors, singers, dancers, and expert reciters of the ancient Vedic histories. Powerful wrestlers would compete, and the athletes would give wonderful displays. Food and drink of the best quality would be served in abundance, and at the end of the celebration, Draupadi would then select a husband from among the kings and princes who had been assembling from all parts of the world. The Brahmins told the Pandavas that they had heard that Drupada had set a most difficult task for the man who would win his daughter's hand. The kings who were coming to compete would also be distributing much charity to the Brahmins in hopes of invoking auspiciousness for themselves and obtaining victory at the Swayamvara. The Brahmins laughed as they spoke. They pointed to the simple cloth the Pandavas were wearing. It seems you boys could use some new cloth. Follow us. Having received all that you require, you may return with us or go wherever you will. Inviting the five brothers to travel with them, the Brahmins continued, who knows? The princess may even select one of you boys, all as handsome as the celestials. They pointed to Bhima. This godlike youth has a body like a thunderbolt. Surely he will win much wealth if he enters the wrestling competitions. Yudhishthir smiled. We shall all accompany you to Kampilya. Pray, lead the way. The party proceeded. They traveled by day and at night, stopped in roadside woods or on lake shores. Yeah, stopped in roadside woods or on lake shores. At night they would stop. With their gentle speech and amiable behavior, the Pandavas endeared themselves to whomever they met, but no one recognized them. Yeah. As they reached the outskirts of the city, they came to a small village. Walking from house to house to find accommodations, they were soon admitted by a potter and his family. The brothers settled there and lived by begging, just as they had done in Ekachakra. They learned from the villagers that the Swayamvara was to take place in a few days. The king had set a stiff test for winning Draupadi. A small target had been placed on top of a tall pole. Beneath it was a rotating plate with one small hole in it. So there is a pole, and on top of the pole is the target that is to be shot, and beneath that is a golden plate, a rotating plate with one small hole. An arrow had to be shot through that hole at the moment it was aligned with the target. The king had also determined that a particular bow should be used, one which only an extraordinary man could lift. Okay, one which an ordinary man could barely lift. That means an ordinary man would not be able to lift. It will take an extraordinary person to lift that bow. Only an extraordinary warrior would be able to pass the test and win the divine Draupadi's hand. So you all know who is Drupada looking for. He's looking for Arjuna. Arjuna was enlivened. He prayed to Krishna that he might have the chance to try for the princess. From Vyasdev's words, it seemed that she was destined to be the wife of one of them, and by such a union, the brothers would gain the friendship and alliance of the powerful Drupada. That would probably prove useful in the future. Arjun eagerly awaited the Swayamvar. Drupada had made lavish preparations for the ceremony. A huge stadium had been constructed. In its massive sandstone walls were 100 gates, each one inlaid with gold and precious gems. Each gate was wide enough to admit crowds passing through. Within the stadium were gently sloping terraces. I'll read that part again. I got distracted. Drupada had made lavish preparations for the ceremony. A huge stadium had been constructed. In its massive sandstone walls were 100 gates, each one inlaid with gold and precious gems. Each gate was wide enough to admit crowds passing through. Many, like a big crowd, could pass through the gate at a time. Within the stadium were gently sloping terraces made of coral and lapis lazuli, semi precious stone. At the front of these terraces were hundreds of jewel encrusted thrones arranged for the many monarchs in attendance. All around the stadium, the king had built white mansions for their residence. So the kings that have come there to participate in the Swayamvar, temporary homes were built for them all around the stadium. White mansions. The buildings were many storied and looked like the cloud kissing peaks of Mount Kailash. The windows of those mansions were covered with gold lattices and the walls studded with diamonds and emeralds. Costly rugs were spread on their marble floors. When the day of the Swayamvar arrived, the kings were invited into the stadium. They came through the northern gate and took their seats on the golden thrones. As the monarchs entered, thousands of trumpets blared and kettle drums resounded throughout the stadium. Many rishis, all of them shining like the sun, entered through the eastern gate. Pay attention, the Kshatriyas are entering through the northern gate, the sages are entering through the eastern gate. The terraces, adorned with countless wreaths and garlands, were filled with Panchala's citizens. As they flooded into the stadium, the colorfully dressed people made a sound like the roar of the ocean. The scent of black aloe and frankincense wafted throughout the stadium as everyone settled into their places. The Pandavas entered with the Brahmins and took their place in their midst, unnoticed by anyone. They looked around the arena. At the head of all the assembled kings sat Duryodhana and his brothers, resembling a blazing planet surrounded by 100 bright stars. Bhima felt his anger rising, but Yudhishthir checked him with a glance. They could not risk being discovered yet. The ceremony had begun. Actors and dancers were entertaining the crowd. Brahmins were performing fire sacrifices. Drupada was distributing charity. All of this continued for 15 days. And with each day, the attendance swelled. The Pandavas were astonished to see Drupada's affluence. The Panchala king was distributing heaps of gold and gems to the Brahmins. Although dressed as Brahmins, the Pandavas did not go forward to collect charity, but remained in their places, awaiting the day when Draupadi would appear. On the 16th day, the princess, dressed in robes of shining yellow silk and adorned with brilliant ornaments, entered the arena. So, up until then, no one even saw Draupadi. On the 16th day, she entered the arena. In her hands, she held a golden dish containing the nuptial garland, which she would place around the neck of the man who successfully passed the test her father had set. Gentle music from the flute, tabor, and veena played as Draupadi walked toward her seat next to her father. Seeing her beauty, the kings and princes suddenly stood up and brandished their weapons. They boasted to one another in loud voices, I shall win this princess. None can equal my strength and prowess. Draupadi will be mine. That host of princes seemed like an agitated ocean as they rose and boasted of their power. Afflicted by the god of love and staring at one another in jealousy, they slapped their arms and held aloft their bows and swords, looking like so many Himalayan elephants maddened by desire while in rut. The celestial chariots of the gods, led by the guardians of the four quarters of the universe, Yamaraj, Indra, Kuvera, and Vayu, settled above the arena. Can you imagine? Even the four guardians of the whole universe came to attend Draupadi Swayamvar. So their chariots stationed in the sky above the arena. Siddhas, Charanas, Nagas, Rudras, Daityas, Danavas, and Guhakas assembled in the canopy of the sky. All types of celestial beings, even Daityas, they all came to witness Draupadi's Swayamvara, curious to witness Drupada's sacrifice and the selection of Draupadi's husband. The great rishis headed by Narada, Angira, and Parvatya stood in the sky among the gods, appearing like suns. When the five Pandava brothers saw Draupadi's dark and lovely face, they felt their hearts pierced as if by darts. They stood up from their seats and gazed at her exquisite form as she moved gracefully to her father's side. On the opposite side of the arena were the Yadavas from Mathura. Sitting in their midst, Krishna noticed the Pandavas stand. He looked closely at the five brothers and turning to Balaram said, "In my opinion, those five men over there are the Pandavas." Krishna indicated the brothers with a slight nod of his head, not with his finger, he just said like that, with a slight nod of his head. "I heard a rumor that my cousins survived the fire in Varanavat. This now seems true. What is your opinion, Rama?" Balaram carefully observed each of the five brothers. There was no doubt. They were Kunti's sons. He turned and smiled at Krishna, who returned his smile, but they remained silent about their discovery. By now, all the princes were gazing only at Draupadi and her father. None of them noticed the Pandavas in their midst. Drupada waved to them, and biting his lips in anger and envy toward one another, they sat down. Okay, everyone had stood up, so Drupada waved to them, right? Sit down. So, biting their lips in anger, and envy toward one another, they sat down. As celestial flowers fell from the sky, the sound of countless conches and kettle drums filled the stadium. Draupadi's brother Drishtadyumna stood up like a golden flagstaff raised in honor of Indra. The stadium fell silent as he announced the names of all the kings and princes present. He first named the princes from Hastinapur, then those from Mathura, then all those attending from hundreds of other countries and provinces. Wow, he named all of them. Drishtadyumna held his sister's arm and said in a voice that rumbled like thunder, "This princess will be won today by he who can hit the mark." The prince pointed to the huge bow lying on a golden table. "There is a bow and the arrows you must use. There is the bow and the arrows you must use. Truly truly do I say that whoever shoots an arrow through the device and into the target will win Draupadi's hand. Only one of noble birth and great prowess will be capable of this feat." Drishtadyumna sat down near his father. Drupada instructed his priest to kindle the sacrificial fire for the Swayamvara ceremony. The sounds of thousands of Brahmins reciting Vedic prayers filled the arena. The king looked around at the assembled princes. He was not impressed. None of these proud monarchs looked like a suitable match for his daughter. The king thought of Arjun. If only that prince were still alive. He had heard a rumor that the Pandavas had escaped the fire. But where were they now? This test could only be passed by someone of Arjun's ability. Drupada had deliberately devised a test that only Arjun could pass in hopes that the Pandava might appear. Yaja had promised him he would obtain a daughter from his sacrifice who would become Arjun's wife. How could the Rishi's words prove false? Drupada looked on anxiously as each king and prince was called to try the test. With their crowns and golden earrings glinting in the warm sunshine, the kings and princes strode up one by one to the bow. It was only with considerable effort that they were able to even lift the massive weapon from the table. Having somehow managed that and finally getting it upright, they then had to bend and string it. These kings could not manage the task even in their imaginations. The bow would bend slightly, then spring back with great force. The The princes were thrown to the ground, their bodies bruised, and their crowns and garlands scattered. As they each took their turn and were in turn humiliated, they returned to their fine golden thrones, straightening their shining ornaments, and as they walked, panting for breath, their romantic ardor dispelled, the princes sat silently, shaking their heads, humiliated. Karna's turn came. Seeing him march toward the bow like a golden mountain entering the arena, the Pandavas considered that the target had been struck and the princess won. As he approached the bow, however, Draupadi stood up and said in a loud voice, I shall not accept a charioteer's son as my husband. Knowing that Karna was the son of Adhiratha, leader of the Sutas, who generally acted as chariot drivers, Draupadi exercised her prerogative and denied him the opportunity to attempt the test. Karna blushed deeply and laughed in vexation. Glancing at the son, he turned and strode back to his seat. He ground his teeth and wrung his hands in anger, but said nothing. The powerful king of the Chedis, Shishupal, was next. With great effort, he bent the bow into a semicircle, then lost his grip as he tried to string it. He was thrown onto his back and lay there exhausted for several moments before returning to his seat, defeated. Then Jarasandha, lord of the Magadha country and scourge even of the gods, took his turn. He bent the bow and held it in one hand while trying to string it with the other. Wow. He bent the bow and held it in one hand and trying to string it with the other. Again, the bow resisted and he was thrown to his knees. Sneering at the other monarch's weakness, Duryodhana strode up. A silence fell upon the assembly as the king of Hastinapur bowed to Drupada. King? Yeah, because I think, I don't know why they're calling him the king already. The king nodded slightly and Duryodhana lifted the bow. He strung it deftly. He strung it and placed on its string one of the golden shafted arrows. Taking careful aim, he loosed the arrow. It sped upwards and passed cleanly through the rotating hole, but missed the target by a hair's breadth. The prince angrily threw down the bow and returned to his seat. Knowing that it was Draupadi's destiny to marry Arjun, none of the Yadava kings, including Krishna and Rama, attempted the test. They simply watched and laughed as the bow hurled each of the princes to the ground. They breathed a sigh of relief when Duryodhana's arrow whistled past the target. That wicked man did not deserve a prize like Draupadi. But where was Arjun? Only Krishna and Balaram felt no apprehension. They looked across at the Brahmin's compound. Now all the kings had tried and failed. Draupadi was still holding the bright red garland on its golden dish. Drstadyumna called for any last contestants. Arjun looked at Dhaumya, who smiled and nodded. The prince stood up and walked into the center of the arena. The assembled Brahmins roared in joy and waved their deerskins. Maybe a simple Brahmin would succeed where even the proud, mighty kings of the earth could not. And if any Brahmin could succeed, it would be this one. Arjun looked like a dark cloud as he advanced toward the bow. He moved like a lion. Not all the Brahmins agreed. Some of the elder Brahmins were doubtful. Fearing that Arjun would humiliate the Brahmin class by this rash act, they spoke out loudly. How can one untrained in arms and lacking strength succeed where even the lords of the earth have failed? Stop that youth. It is merely out of childish impetuosity or vanity that he is attempting this impossible task. We shall all be made to look ridiculous. Other Brahmins just demurred. Just look more closely at this boy. His arms and thighs resemble the trunks of mighty elephants. His shoulders are broad, and he appears as powerful as a maddened lion. He may well succeed. Surely he would not have gone forward if he lacked energy and power. Some of them describe the power of Brahmins. Whether possessed of physical strength or not, Brahmins were always powerful by virtue of their spiritual strength. No Brahman should ever be disregarded. Once all the earth's warriors had been annihilated by Parashuram, who was a Brahmin. The great Rishi Agastya had drunk the entire ocean. There was nothing a Brahmin could not achieve. This youth should not be checked. Yes, let him go forward. He will easily string the bow and strike down the target. The elders replied, "So be it," and again took their seats. Arjun reached the center of the arena, and after bowing to the king, spoke in a voice that echoed around the stadium. "Is it permissible for a Brahman to attempt this test?" Drupada looked curiously at the Brahman, then gave his assent. "It is never disgraceful for rulers to be subordinated by the power of Brahmins," the king replied. "Indeed, they are protected by that power even as Vishnu protects the gods." Arjun turned to the bow and, folding his palms, bowed low before it. Within his mind, he prayed to Krishna. Having walked respectfully around the bow 3 times, he took it up in his right hand. In moments, he had strung it and placed a golden arrow on the string. A complete hush fell over the stadium as Arjun stood absolutely still with the bow drawn to a full circle. He knelt and at the target, aimed upwards at the target. Suddenly, he released the arrow and it shot up with blinding speed. Passing cleanly through the hole, it struck the target in its center. As the target clattered to the ground with the arrow sticking from it, the stadium erupted. The people rose to their feet and cheered, while musicians played innumerable instruments. Drums, trumpets, and conches resounded, and bards immediately composed poems glorifying Arjun's achievement. The gods praised Arjun and sent down showers of celestial flowers. The Brahmins rose in a body, waving their upper garments and water pots, and leaping about in joy. But the kings and princes were seized with shame, and they uttered exclamations of grief and despair. Drupada, his eyes expanded in happiness, gazed in wonder as the mysterious Brahman walked toward the royal dais. Who was he? Could it actually be Arjun? The king noticed the other monarchs becoming agitated. There was clearly going to be a fight. Drupada turned to his chief minister and commanded that his army stand ready. He then told Draupadi to accept the Brahman as her husband. The princess looked at Arjun as he approached the dais. She was immediately attracted by this godlike youth with the gentle demeanor. Maybe he was Arjun, as Yaja had promised. Even if he were not, there was certainly no shame in marrying him. He was a Brahman, and Brahmins were always considered superior to the ruling class or Kshatriyas. And although he appeared to be a Brahmin, he was especially powerful and obviously self controlled. This union was surely sanctified by the presence of Krishna, the all powerful Lord of the creation. Draupadi approached Kunti's son and joyfully placed the garland around his neck. Seeing Draupadi actually accept the Brahman further infuriated the kings. Yudhishthir decided it was time to leave. He rose up with his brothers and walked toward the stadium gates. Arjun followed behind with Draupadi. The Brahmins cheered and praised him as he walked past. From amid the enraged kings, Duryodhana called out, "How does this Drupada dare offend us in this way? He has passed over all the lords of the earth to bestow his daughter upon a poor and unqualified Brahmin. Brahmins should never be allowed to compete in a Swayamvar. which is meant only for the royal order. It seems Drupada invited us here only to insult us." The kings roared in agreement. Some of them waved their weapons. Shishupal then said, "The Panchala king is so proud that he thinks none of us his equal. He deserves to be punished at once. Let us act so that other Swayamvaras do not end in a similar way." The kings stood up with their weapons at the ready. They glared at Drupada and moved in a body toward him. Seeing the overwhelming odds, Drupada backed away in fear. Yudhishthir was observing the scene from the gate. Realizing that Drupada, now his father-in-law, was in danger, he ordered Bhima and Arjuna to assist him. The brothers quickly ran up to the dais and placed themselves between Drupada and the other kings. Arjun still held the sacrificial bow. Bhima tore up a tree from the side of, of the arena and brandished it menacingly. They should have recognized them by this. The two princes looked like Indra and Yamaraj standing against the massed force of Daityas and Danavas. The hundreds of kings stood back warily as they looked at the two heroes facing them. Krishna remained unmoved. Watching the two Pandavas preparing to fight, he turned to Balaram and said quietly, "Any doubts there may have been about the identity of these princes should now be gone. None but Bhima could have torn up that sal tree, and who but Arjun could have struck down the target? O Sankarshan, these are surely the Pandavas." Balaram looked at Bhima and Arjun as they prepared to ward off the maddened kings. "This is certainly true," he smiled. "It is fortunate indeed that our aunt and her young sons have escaped from the fire in Varanavat." Many Brahmins ran forward to support the two Pandavas. They waved their water pots and deerskins, crying out, "Fear not, we shall fight these arrogant monarchs." Arjun smiled and gently restrained them. "Stand aside and watch," he said. "With my sharp arrows I shall stop them, just as so many snakes are checked by the power of mantras." Karna advanced to the head of the kings. He shouted, "Although the royal order should not attack Brahmins, it is permissible if those Brahmins stand ready for battle." Karna stopped at a distance from Arjun and shot arrows at him. Arjun, who was supplied with a large number of shafts by Drupada's soldiers, immediately countered all of Karna's arrows with his own. King Śalya of Madras fought with Bhima, and they appeared like two huge elephants colliding together. Duryodhana and the other kings contended lightly with the other Brahmins who still challenged them. They easily held off the ascetic sages but did not injure them. Arjun sent a number of swift arrows at Karna. They pierced his limbs and stunned him with their force. Karna looked upon his opponent with surprise. He had not expected such dexterity and martial power. Guarding himself more carefully, he replied with hundreds of straight flying shafts, but Arjun again knocked down all his arrows before they reached him. Seeing his expertise, the other kings cheered him on. This infuriated Karna. He released thousands of arrows. They filled the air like a flock of golden birds. Still, Arjun countered them, invoking celestial weapons and creating a mass of arrows that sped toward Karna. The two combatants fought with astonishing skill. As they battled, they called out to one another in the language of heroes, "Behold the strength of my arms! Guard yourself if you can! See how I counter your moves! Stand ready, for I shall release even more deadly weapons." The other king stood by and watched, open mouthed, praising both warriors as they displayed their skills. Karna soon realized he was not to gain the upper hand in the fight, so he stopped his attack and addressed Arjun in a loud voice. "O best of Brahmins, I am pleased with your prowess. Are you the science of arms personified? Perhaps you are Parashuram or Indra, or maybe even the infallible Lord Vishnu. When I am angered, There are none who can fight with me but these personalities, or the son of Kunti, Arjun. Arjun smiled. I am neither Indra nor Parashuram, nor am I any god or divine being. Know me to be a simple Brahman who has become proficient in arms by his Guru's grace. Having mastered both earthly and celestial weapons, I stand here ready to vanquish you in battle. Karna lowered his weapons and became pensive, worried. This was no ordinary Brahman. It would be better to desist from the fight. A Brahman's spiritual power was always greater than a Kshatriya's martial power. The great king Vishwamitra, even though well versed in every divine weapon, could not overpower Vashishta Rishi, and the Brahman Parashuram single handedly defeated all the kings of the earth. Karna bowed to the mysterious Brahman and turned away from the battle. Elsewhere, Bhima and Śalya were still engaged in a fierce hand to hand combat. Locked together, they stamped and rolled about the arena like a pair of maddened elephants fighting for supremacy. Their roars and the sound of their blows filled the stadium, sometimes pushing, sometimes dragging, and sometimes throwing the other down. They fought with unflagging energy. They struck each other with the force of thunderbolts, laughing loudly as they fought. Suddenly, Bhima lifted Śalya high above his head and whirled him around. He threw the king to a distance and left him lying stunned. Remembering him to be the brother of Madri, Bhima did not continue his attack upon Śalya. The kings were amazed to see both Karna and Śalya matched by the two Brahmins. They looked in awe upon Bhima and Arjuna, who stood together ready for further assaults. Surely these two are not Brahmins. Who could fight with Karna except Drona or Arjuna? Who could throw down Śalya other than the mighty Balaram or Bhima? None could face Duryodhana except the unconquerable Krsna. Let us establish their lineage before we continue. The other kings agreed. It was not wise to fight with Brahmins, even if they were offensive. But if these two proved to belong to another class, then the fight could continue with full force. Seeing the kings hesitating, Krishna came forward and spoke to them. O monarchs, the maiden has been fairly and wonderfully won by the Brahman. There is no need for further fighting. Let us not blight this sacred occasion by unnecessary bloodshed, especially by assaulting the Brahmins. With gentle words and arguments, Krishna succeeded in dissuading the kings from further aggression. Gradually, they put away their weapons and left the arena. As they went out, they talked together in amazement, wondering who the two mighty armed Brahmins might be. So that's the end of today's session. Is there any discussions, questions, comments? None. Okay. So we will end the session here. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow.